With your late headlines now this Sunday night, it's the ITV News.
More COVID restrictions could be needed before Christmas. As the vaccine booster programme hit another record, the Health Secretary admits new rules may be needed and soon.
If you wait until data is absolutely perfect, it may well be too late.
Also tonight, pictured the PM, his wife and number 10 staff drinking wine during the first lockdown. Downing Street says it was a staff meeting. Germany follows France to ban British travellers, keeping many families apart. And
this is ITV News with Lucrezia Millarini.
good evening. The Health Secretary has refused to rule out tighter COVID restrictions being needed before Christmas. Sajid Javid today said the rapidly spreading Omicron variant is now dominant across England and beginning to drive up hospital admissions. Scientists are now increasingly concerned the vaccine booster programme that delivered more than 900,000 doses yesterday may not be enough alone. Martin Stew reports.
5 shopping days left until Christmas. The biggest conundrum isn't what to buy, but who will be able to see. Omicron is now the dominant variant across most of the country, and cases are doubling every few days. With scientists warning infections could hit 2 million a day by the new year, the Health Secretary offered no guarantees we won't have to spend Christmas in lockdown again.
We will look at this data, we will take into account other factors and then decide whether further action is needed or not.
It has led talking sooner rather than later, they say.
Look,
you must act sooner rather.
They are, and I understand that, and there's a point there about, you know, if you wait until data is absolutely perfect, it may well be too late.
Today, Wembley Stadium was centre stage in the showdown between vaccines and virus, one of many temporary centres around the country. More than 900,000 top-up jabs were administered in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland yesterday, a new record. Scientists say the booster offers the best protection, but those getting their jab this morning won't get the full benefits until after New Year's Eve. In the meantime, we're daily breaking COVID records, and the NHS is under increasing pressure.
It's a different pressure this time. So the pressure is the sickness levels in staff. So many of our staff are also positive with the new variant. Many of them are contacts of people with the new variant. So therefore our workforce is depleted right now.
The British Medical Association says 50,000 could be off sick with COVID by Christmas Day. And scientists say something similar could be mirrored across society.
The concern is if we're going to have so many people who are infected, this means an enormous numbers of people who are isolating, and that's when things start to grind to a halt. You know, that's when not just the hospitals don't work, but, you know, food doesn't get delivered, the bins don't get emptied.
London's mayor says extra restrictions like social distancing and limiting households from mixing are inevitable. If he's right, the question is when, and will people listen?
If it really keeps getting worse, I guess that's what it has to be done. So I guess I'm okay with it.
The knowledge that they have is more than the knowledge I have about it, so I would go with the flow.
Does the restriction apply to the government as well, or is it just to everyone else? Would be my question.
As scientists and ministers wait for more data to make their decision, we wait to find out whether we'll be lonely this Christmas again. Martin Stew, ITV News.
A picture of the Prime Minister, his wife and around a dozen staff drinking wine in the Downing Street garden during the first lockdown has been published tonight. The Guardian says the image was taken in May last year. Our political reporter Harry Horton is in Downing Street for us this evening. Harry, damaging, especially when the PM is considering more restrictions.
Yes, this photo was taken during the first lockdown. The rules were quite strict then. At the time, household mixing was limited to a maximum of 2 people outdoors. Now, this photo shows the Prime Minister and his wife Carrie sat in the Downing Street garden. There's a cheese board. They appear to be drinking wine. Elsewhere in the picture, there are other groups of people. They also appear to be drinking. Now, this photo was taken just after a press conference in which the then Health Secretary Matt Hancock urged people to stick to the rules and not gather in groups ahead of good weather forecast that weekend. Downing Street insists no rules were broken. They say this was a work meeting. There are, of course, allegations about multiple parties in Downing Street last Christmas. That's being investigated by the senior civil servant Sue Gray. You'd expect this event would be incorporated into that investigation. I think there are two key problems for the Prime Minister tonight. The first is that he hoped this investigation would be over by now. It's clearly not, and it appears to be widening. And the second is, as we've been hearing, he's got some big decisions to make in the next few days about whether to introduce extra restrictions at a time when his own adherence to previous restrictions is being questioned.
All right, Harry at Downing Street, thank you. Concerns over the Omicron variant are leading countries across Europe to impose new restrictions. In the Netherlands, a strict lockdown has come into force with bars and restaurants shut. Meanwhile, Germany joins France tonight, introducing an effective ban on people arriving from the UK. As Ian Woods reports, it means another Christmas for many separated from their loved ones.
The Christmas getaway is underway, but not for some of those who were planning to go to Germany. Like the French, they're raising the drawbridge and banning most visitors from Britain.
Our flights on Boxing Day obviously won't be operating.
Hannah Louise should have been flying to Berlin.
It's now the second year running that the kids have been disappointed not to be able to see the dad or extended family at Christmas.
Constantly changing rules mean that travellers may be flying into the unknown.
I mean, when you haven't seen family for a long time and I'm a single parent with my two children, I haven't seen anybody in my family for 2 years. I mean, it's got to be done, hasn't it?
When I come back, I will be worried, but if there will be restrictions, my office will let me work from home, so I will just not come back.
The streets of Amsterdam were virtually deserted as the Netherlands began day one of a 4-week lockdown. The Dutch government acted swiftly, even though Omicron is not yet as prevalent there as it is in the UK. Non-essential shops and restaurants are closed, with only takeaways permitted.
Well, basically everything is closed. It's such a bummer. But we hope to still enjoy our time here.
Prime Minister Mark Rutte said it was a precautionary measure.
The Netherlands is opting for making use of, I think, an opportunity to try lockdowns right before the big wave of Omicron will hit the country. The numbers are already high in the Netherlands.
Across the border in Belgium, thousands of people took part in a peaceful march through Brussels to protest at COVID restrictions, even though there is, as yet, no lockdown here. Denmark, on the other hand, is closing its theatres and fun fairs. European governments will be watching to see if tougher measures do lead to a drop in infections, as they decide how best to confront the latest COVID challenge. Ian Woods, ITV News.
The government has announced Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will take over responsibility of the UK's relationship with the EU. She will take over the role from Brexit Minister Lord Frost, who resigned yesterday, criticising the government's direction of travel. At least 169 people are now known to have died after a typhoon struck the Philippines. Rescue teams searching for survivors have described scenes of complete carnage. And the architect, Richard Rogers, has died aged 88. He found fame in the 1970s after being picked to design the Pompidou Centre in Paris. He went on to design the Millennium Dome and the Zenith in Cardiff. Football now. Liverpool dropped further behind Premier League leaders Manchester City after a draw at Tottenham this afternoon. Both sides faced severe disruption due to COVID that led to 6 games being postponed this weekend. But as Chris Scudder reports, there was plenty of drama.
A rip-roaring Premier League game that had everything.
This time he scores in characteristic Harry Kane fashion from previous seasons.
But Kane was lucky to stay on the field for a studs-up challenge that brought only a yellow card and Jurgen Klopp seeing red. On another day, Spurs might have won at a canter. Chances came, but were wasted.
And he knows.
And Liverpool did not need a second invitation to show them how to do it. 1-1. Kane's first home league goal of the season should at least have been doubled in the final game before Christmas.
Kane again.
But Liverpool were in no mood for festive goodwill and looked like stealing the points with a second goal.
It's a goal.
But under Antonio Conte, Spurs are made of sterner stuff these days, and Heung-min Son's persistence saved the day. 2-2.
Time they snaffle the chance.
It was frantic stuff, and unlike Kane, Andy Robertson's wild challenge brought a red card. Klopp ended the night as he'd started it. So much for Christmas cheer. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
In Scottish football, Celtic have beaten Hibernian in the League Cup final at Hampden Park. 2 goals from Japanese forward Kyogo Furuhashi helped this team come from behind to win 2-1. And it's Celtic's first trophy under new manager Ange Postecoglou, who says the win is just the start for the club. And in cricket, Australia are on the verge of taking a 2-0 lead in the Ashes. After being set an improbable target of 468, England finished the day on 82 for 4. Hopes of an unlikely draw perished and captain Joe Root fell for the last ball of the day. And that's it from us, from everyone here on the Weekend Team. Good night.